Thank you so much for this invitation, and thank you to Professor Babic for this generous presentation. Of course, this kind of presentation is always an over-presentation, an exaggeration, but I like it.
And enjoy it.
And moreover, thank you to Professor Bojanic, who is a great brain hidden inside. And beside all this, there is Peter Bojanic. This presentation, I have three kinds of presentation. That means always the same thing. It's a critique of thirst theory and a defense of the mind theory against her. I have three versions that which differs only in the title, because I have a version whose title is Documentality versus Intentionality, which is the aggressive one. Then there is the medium Documentality and Intentionality, and this is the appeasement version, Documentality as Intentionality, which was also a way to suggest to serve that this main problem, namely collective intentionality, can be solved if we consider its intentionality as a documentality. Well, I don't believe that they will agree, but it's less aggressive than versus intentionality will kill me. Reading the title. So, in order to survive, it's better that I say documentality as intentionality. My presentation will have 5 parts. First part is a problem. Excuse me, just in order to explain that intentionality, by intentionality I mean with say metonymic description, the constitutive rule of serve X count as Y in C, which has been presented in the construction of social reality and has been transformed in making the social world. And as documentality, is always in this metonymic way, I intend my constitutive rule. Object is an inscribed act. Then I will show what I mean by object is an inscribed act. Thank you very much. Apparently, before dying, Marcel Proust ordered a beer in a bar under his home, and he said, "It will be as like all the things in life will arrive too late." But Catherine not survive. But just in order to, because all the people know X as count as Y and C, object inscribed act means that a social object, for instance, this conference is the result of a social act, the fact that this conference has been organized, and the fact that the conference has held here in Belgrade, and that needs to be inscribed. This is very important because, for instance, speech X theory in Austin's sense was not considering the role of writing in constructing social reality, as inscribed in our head, for instance, or in a piece of paper, or in this kind of documents that usually are present in social reality. And this kind of theory was proposed by me in this book on the mobile phone in 2005, and then developed in a more systematic way in Documentality in Ferraris 2009. Well, my presentation will have 5 parts. First part show that intentionality, namely source theory, has a problem with the object, namely with the X, which is supposed to be the basis of the Y, of the physical X, which is supposed to be the basis of the Y, the physical, the social object. Then, a second problem is the intentional, the act, namely the fact that this miracle that transforms a physical object into a social object is done by an exoteric function that serves called collective intentionality, and there is a problem in the act, and in this collective, in order to make it clear what is this collective intentionality. Then I will present the representationality, which is a false remedy, who was suggested in 2003 by the British philosopher Barry Smith in a critique of Searle. Searle rejected this critique, but in fact adopted the critique of Barry Smith in his Making the Social World in 2010, rephrasing his constitutive rule of social object. And then, after the critique of Searle, I will show, I hope I will show that all these problems will be solved by documentality. The problem of the object and the problem of the act. Well, I begin with the object. The advantage of Searle's theory is that it's very simple. He says, again, you take this eternal piece of paper. We discovered that it's not neutral, the fact that, as example, uses a banknote. You take a piece of paper which is a physical X, and then you give him a social role, and then it becomes a social object. This is the transformation. You take say you take a man and you transform it into a professor, for instance, or into a war criminal. There are plenty of possibility, and or the same thing, and this by an act of intentionality. But we discover soon an interesting problem, that this rule does not work in standard cases. For instance, take the Poland. Poland, now we see that Warsaw is close to the east border of Poland. If you were seeing Poland during the Second World War, we will see that Warsaw was very close to the western border, and there are other times in which we have also maps of Poland during the Middle Age. Poland exists, but there is not Warsaw. And note that between 815 and 921, Poland was simply not existing. But when in 921, in the Treaty of Trianon, they decided to make again Poland, the argument was not, hey, we found some molecules of Poland, why not rebuild Poland? The reason of rebuilding Poland was based not on the X, like the heart of Poland, but on documents. Well, some historical documents proving that Poland was so and so. For instance, the actual Poland entails two German territories. Pommern and Silesia was included after the war, but still is Poland. And for instance, take another social object, small. This is the Fiat. Once they made cars in Turin. Now there is many other activities there. But anyway, Fiat still exists. But the existence of Fiat was not related to this physical building or on the cars that was built by Fiat, but on documents. that makes it that so the X, and here immediately we discover what is the problem. This is not a physical object with a social role on which in a second moment we add a social role. This is a document, in fact. From the very beginning, it's a document. Then another case, where is the X of Telecom? Italian Telecom was owner of the phones, was the owner of the phone and of the line. But now she is no more the owner of the phone and of the line, but still exists because the X was not the phones and the line, but was the documents. And of course, even more for a cell phone company. This is not the X of Vodafone. The X of Vodafone is the document that makes the identity of the firm. And also for negative entities. Note that very soon we will have a difficult ontological problem. I mean in Eurozone, because it's possible that Greece will leave Euro, but we still had the cent of the Greek cent. We will consider them valid or invalid like money. This will be an ontological problem that but at the moment, where is the public debt of Greece? There is not such a physical thing, a massive physical thing, an X, which is this negative entity, which is the public debt of Greece. So we saw many cases of standard social object in which there is a clear problem with the X as a basis of the Y for the social object. What is paradoxical is that Search theory applies only in non-standard cases. For instance, in Duchamp applies very well. This is an artwork. X physical objects counts as Y social object in C in a gallery in New York in 1917. Or it is perfect for ready-made. It's simply to be considered for the ready-made. And in fact, there is some proof that among the inspiration of Search theory, there is a Goodman R theory that is based also on the experience of ready-made. Another example is, for instance, X liter counts as Y euro in C Naples. This is not a standard case. This is an abnormal case. And we can also have the reversal. Y social object counts as X physical object in C. For instance, X toxic assets counts as X, Y toxic assets counts as X paper in C, New York 2009, with the help of our friend Madoff. And this again shows that if you go from the social object to the physical object, you discover that this kind of physical object is paper. Namely, the traditional support for documents. So this is a set of problems for the first part of search theory, namely the object. But there are other problems with the act, namely the collective intentionality is very important for search. This is a quote from the construction of social reality. The central span on the bridge from physics to society is collective intentionality. But the problem with collective intentionality, as we have several problems on this kind of concept. The first is to define what is it, because it's not clear at all the nature of collective intentionality. In a sense, it's Hegelian objective spirit, because I that is a we and the we that is an I. This is the description of objective spirit in Hegel. And in fact, we can say that collective intentionality captures this kind of object. But since Searle denies the constitutive role of institution as objectivation of intentionality, for instance, thing like this, which is produced by intentionality and not producing intention, and not also producing intentionality, there is a problem in defining what properly is collective intentionality. Second problem is whether it is a bridge between physical and social, because what is surprising in Searle's version is the fact that he also imagined that collective intentionality is something natural inscribed in our body that makes a bridge from what is physical in our body into what is social in our practices. But when mirror neurons were discovered, then all the people began to say, wow, we find the natural basis for collective intentionality. In fact, we find the natural basis for plenty of things, and not only for collective, practically for all. But it was interesting because this attempt of seeing, well, we found the physical basis for collective intentionality as something, as a kind of Cartesian flower. Say, the mirror neurons play the same role of pineal gland in Descartes' system, and I say the same role of pineal gland because what is interesting that is in Searle's version, intentionality and social reality has much to do with res cogitans and practically nothing to do with res extensa, has nothing to do with physical. And there is also something which is really surprising. At a given moment, Searle says, many times in society we make acts that has nothing of physical. For instance, to speak and make speech X. But this is not to consider that acoustic is a part of physics. And when he says to bridge from the natural into the social, is properly speaking the bridge from res extensa to res cogitans. Another problem is more practical, and is does collective intentionality explain the pool of social reality? Because this is a point that was emerged also in yesterday during our discussion. Because the example Searle give of collective intentionality are all examples that involve training. You should be trained in order to dance together, in order to to make a journey together and to play violin together. This is very complicated. This requires. So it's not the basis, but it's the result of social reality. We have social reality that implies imitation, education, and after that you became able to act in social reality. There is also someone who say, well, it's like a jam session in order to say there is not really a training in order to act in social reality. But this is not considered that people who makes jam session are people that plays always together in order to be able to interact each other. So it's also a kind of training. It's not simply natural. And the last problem is the fact that we don't say where is it, because individual intentionality we imagine that is in the head, person, but collective intentionality, the only way to find out where is the collective intentionality is to look at documents. For instance, documents is a proof of collective intentionality. There is something written, and then under the end of the document there are signatures which are expression of the collective intentionality. But in this sense we find again that collective intentionality is document. There were nothing else as document. The other possibility that collective intentionality is among the acts. It's fascinating, but not so problem. We have here our individual intentionality, and then, for instance, between my head and the head of Professor Babbage, there is a collective intentionality. Here we can grasp there is some collective intentionality among us, but I believe it's a little bit messy. So that those I find are two serious problems, because we have an object which is not valid for standard cases and practically acts only for ready-made. The only social object which is really explained by Searle's theory is Duchamp ready-made. Not even Brillo box of Andy Warhol, because Brillo box was rebuilt in another form, so that is not a real ready-made. And the problem that this Deus ex machina, which is collective intentionality, is hard to be recognized as such. Considering not exactly the whole problem, but the fact that, for instance, in social world now we have an object like this, in which seemingly there are many objects produced in the web which are social objects. The British philosopher Barry Smith, in an article appeared in 2003, observed, criticizing Searle, that exist what he called freestanding white terms, namely the fact that when we have, for instance, when I do my home banking on my PC, there I have some Y, which in Barry Smith's sense has no X, has no physical object, and is suggested to call them representation. I have some doubt about the fact that there are no physical object in this Y, because if I break my PC, then my own banking ends, and this proves that a physical object exists. But there are another problem. If we say that these freestanding Y terms are representation, how can we distinguish 1,000 real dollars from 1,000 ideal dollars? We have no difference between the social object and the mental object. To think, to be married and to be married becomes the same thing, and to own 1,100 real dollars and to imagine to own 100 dollars is the same thing. Well, this Searle do not accept at the very beginning this critique of Barry Smith. They said no, it's not important, but in fact he accepted, because he's intelligent, and he saw that it was not a real solution for the problem of X, but in a sense was capable to hide this X so complicated in his theory, and this explains why the constitutive rule of social object in 2010 in making social work is we make it the case through a declaration that a state function Y exists in context C, which is exactly the assumption of the criticism of Barry Smith, and say coming back home because it's Austin. It's simply the speech acts in Austin. If you look there, this is the description of the performative power of a speech act. Well, anyway, in this sense, Searle too assumes that social objects created by this declaration are representation. But clearly there is a problem in what is representation, and the result of this transformation. So in a sense is surprising, because you want to be a realist. In fact, this is naturalist and not realist, because his social theory is very, very constructionist. For instance, he says everything can be money, which is not clear. It's clearly false that everything can be money. We can't use mountains for money or ash for money. Something is quite not a pure stipulation. But here, the fact that the social object began to be a representation, and that means that he accepted the perspective of Barry Smith, leads Searle in some surprising affirmation in his book of 2010. The most surprising among them is this: the recent economical crisis demonstrated how money and other tools of social reality are the outcome of a massive imagination, which is surprising. Economy is the outcome of the imagination, which leads the simple heads that we are to address Professor Searle some question like this: if economic reality really depends on imagination, why we don't imagine getting richer instead of getting poor? Because this should be, if this depends on imagination, we should have this kind of possibility. And if someone says that money is the outcome of imagination, there is only a sensible objection to him. Right, give me your money then. Because if it is imagination, I agree with you, give me your money. It's like Leibniz in his refutation of Sextus. You are right. Now the question arises among the two old enemies, because I have also, this is an historical hypothesis. Searle avoided to see the importance of documents in his social theory because of his war against Derrida's grammatology, who made him blind on this point. Because now, anyway, who is the most postmodern? Because Derrida says nothing exists outside the text, and Searle says nothing exists outside the head. So that I believe that is the most postmodern among the two. He's really a Berkeleyan philosopher, and in fact he teaches in Belgrade. But after a life spent in finding postmodernity, it became the most postmodern of the postmoderns. End of the analysis of the false remedy. 3 parts of the 5 of my discourse have been done, so this is the good news. After approaching the constructive part, I was suggesting only something which has an exclusive morphological interest and nothing to do with the theory. And there's the surprising resemblance between Derrida and Mourinho. And this also a proof that phrenology is a false theory, because since they are morphologically similar, they should have the same theory, which is clearly false. They had very different theories. Well, now I come to the alternative theory. Namely the documentality, the fact that I always insisted on the importance of writing on documents during my criticism should allow easily to see what is the positive suggestion. During his article, in his article of 2003 on freestanding white terms, Barry Smith was quoting also this Peruvian economist, De Soto, which in a book appeared in 2000, whose name is The Mystery of Capital, Why Capital Triumphs in West and not in the rest of the world. And the quote was, "Capital is born by representing, writing, in a title, a security, a contract, and other such records, the most economically and socially useful quality associated with a given asset." This quote was necessary to Smith in order to show that freestanding white terms are representation. In quotes, De Soto saying, well, capital is born by representing. Note that De Soto quotes also in his book Derrida's Grammatology, and I told to Barry Smith, look, it was Derrida's Grammatology. I will send him to erase the quote. This is a political fight. But anyway, erasing or not erasing, if you rightly read without or refine to the grammatology, the quote is capital is born representing in writing. What is important is writing is not representing, because representing is a mental object. Writing is a social object, a shared social object for two persons. In a title, security, a contract, and other such records, the most economically and socially useful qualities associated with a given asset. And note, it's not only writing, title, security, contract, records, all a list of documents is the basis of and De Soto is very clear on this point. Note that more or less the same thing was written by Oswald Spengler in Der Untergang des Abendlandes in 1980. He has all a chapter on what he calls the Faustian money, which was produced by documents, and he says more or less the same thing. He says an evidence. So what is important is that not the representation, which allows not to make a difference between mental and social object, but the inscription. The inscription makes it so what is written here can be read by others. And not what is written here cannot be read by others, even with the machines of technical resonance. This explains also the problem of negative entities. This which was the most one of the most relevant problems in Searle's theory. This is a quote of an Italian newspaper for a scandal like Enron. In this case, it was Parmalat who produces milk and cheese and dates. According to the original plans, they should have been hidden as if they were a corpse in a hole in the ground which was dug the previous night in the middle of the Po Valley, right behind Parmalat's main building. However, they ended up in the wrong hands, those of the Justice of Milan, thereby getting the dance of handcuffs started. We are talking about 3 pieces of paper. This is the depth on which the accountants of Parmalat, few hours before the outburst of the news, summed up the budget of the bad enterprise of the group, which was destined to collect all debts and most of the secrets of Mr. Danzi, who was the owner, and his partners. The Bon Lat, noted that is the anagram of La Bonte, 3 pieces of papers whose content, Repubblica, which is the newspaper, will reveal in what follows. So here is the answer on what is the X of the negative entity. It's a piece of paper or a computer file in which, or the head of people, in which is described debt. And this is valid not only in economy, of course. We can extend the principle far besides the formulation on simple economy which was given by De Soto, also because De Soto, quoting of grammatology, was very perfectly aware of the fact that Derrida's theory was applying on the whole social reality. In fact, for Derrida also on natural reality it was the problem. But for instance, here we have two cases, a real case. One got married with her fiancé who died 1 year before, 18 November 2009. A real history. Magali would have married her Jonathan November 208, but he died 2 days before the yes in a motorcycle accident. Last Saturday, Magali managed to get her dream realized by appealing to a little-known article in the French Civil Code, which enacts posthumous marriage if all formalities have been retained by the betrothed. In France, every year, around 10 posthumous marriages are celebrated, which is much. I wonder what is the advantage of a posthumous marriage. You see, the most relevant advantage is that it does not entail a posthumous divorce, because it's not, you can conceive a posthumous divorce included. It's an all-inclusive experience. But this anecdote was noticed to me by Elena Casetta, who sent me the link to the page. I'm very indebted to this guy. It's very, very interesting also because we can make, say, a Gedanken experiment, or it's not necessarily an experiment of thought. Maybe it's also true history, but we have, for a reason which will appear very soon, no evidence, no memory of the fact. Namely, the marriage between people with Alzheimer's disease. Imagine a marriage in which all the people are Alzheimer's ill. The two who married, who celebrated, the witness, which are always present in this case, the parents, the friends, all the people. And all these recording devices which are present is not accessory, the fact that in every social act there are so much recording devices. Why have this recording device? Why you want to remember if you are married? You should prove that you are married. And also the register are written with an ink that disappears. Then the day after they wake up, they don't remember anything, there is no document. Are they married? Clearly not, because social object exists only if people are aware of the existence of the object, and in being aware of the existence of the object plays a crucial role the fact that this existence is registered somewhere, in my memory, in a document. This is why documents are so important in social reality, because if there is writing, you can marry a dead person. If there is no writing, you cannot marry a living one. So this is a relevant difference. If Alzheimer is not, we can also, there is another version of the experiment that suppose that after the ceremony in the champagne, they all have a product whose name is amnesine that make the amnesty, if you prefer. There is a Platonic antecedent of this. In this sense, we can say that nothing social exists outside the text, and we make the proof of because it's clearly false what Derrida say, nothing exists beside the text, because natural object exists beside the text, ideal object exists beside the text, but social object require a kind of record. And this is demonstrated if you take, for instance, preserving all tickets and pieces of paper which you collect in a day, doing the same in a week traveling, and then you discovered. And now to look in your cell phone, there is plenty of recording, and for every recording there is a social act and a social object. In this sense, I formulated the rule of documentality. Object is an inscribed act. Social objects are the result of social act concerning at least two persons, characterized by the fact of being inscribed in a document, in a computer file, or in the form of memory traces in people's heads. So also society without writing have documents because they have they have inscription, they have strange habits and strange dresses and so on and so forth. Well, last point, can I take still 5 minutes?
Yeah, you may.
Thank you. Otherwise, the theory would be incomplete. But of course, who cares? The answer could also be who cares? Who cares? The obvious objection can be, well, even if we admit that documents are important in constructing social reality, more important than, for instance, Searle say they are important, even though you should admit that in order to make document, you require intentionality. Here, my answer is twofold. First, nobody denies that in order to write, I need an intentionality. But this intentionality is an individual intentionality that can become a collective intentionality via the document. Because as the Constitution, we create with the document a collective intentionality. The second point is that also the individual intentionality is created by inscription and documents. I show you how. This is one of the final scene of this movie. I believe that the German title was Das Verfahren. Is it? Der Untergang is this movie on which was appeared in 2004 with Bruno Ganz starring Hitler, playing Hitler on the last days of Hitler in the bunker of Berlin. This is the very end of the Battle of Berlin. There is some German troops who find themselves in a protected zone and decide to defend themselves against the Russian. At a given moment the Russian appears. It's a very dramatic scene because during the whole movie we never saw the Russian, we only heard the sharpness, but they arrive, and then there is the soldier with their weapons, and at a given moment, one is clear at the moment of the decision, and he takes his weapon and puts the weapon on the head. Then another, so another. This is not collective intentionality. He thought, I surrender. So we surrender. Also because he has no authority in order to surrender. And this was also not a collective intentionality because someone do not surrender, someone shot, someone shot himself. And this was not enough in order to say that this scene of surrendering was the end of the battle, because the battle ended at the moment in which is present in the movie, was signed a document in this very moment. And this was, for instance, the problem with President Bush when he arrived in Baghdad in May 1st of 2003. He said the war is over. It was not over at all because no document was signed. And this was not a case of intentionality, this was a case of imitation in a sense. Someone imitated the other. There was someone who decided to surrender, another imitated this one. All this kind of collective action that in the style of the psychology of masses are presented are in fact cases of imitation, which was very clear, for instance, in Gabriel Tarde's sociology. In this sense, also the idea that there is a collective intentionality implies also a spatial relevance of intentionality, a spatial relevance of intentionality which is supposed to be something like a kind of spirit or a Christian soul acting inside, because when we imagine, with our initiative we create documents, we make it, so we imagine something like that. But the most usual description of the mind in philosophical tradition describe it like a tabula which is written. So like a kind of internal document. It's impressive how many versions of this tabula are present in Plato, in Aristotle De Anima, in Hume Treatise, or in Leibniz, and even in Freud, and also in, this was the name of the iPad. The first name was McTablet, maybe a name for a whiskey or a Scottish clam, but in fact it was recalling exactly this kind of tablet. In this sense, it's not surprising to describe ourselves like a natural automata. This is Leibniz monadology. Chaque corps organique vivant est une espèce de machine divine ou d'un automate naturel qui surpasse infiniment tous les automates artificiels. So we are able to big machine, wondrous machine like in parcel order to go, much more complicated than that simple machine. But machine, there is not such a moment in which there is this genius of intentionality that make it so that we are living completely different from the rest of the nature, which is strongly supposed by Searle, for instance, when he criticized that computer thing in the argument of Chinese room, the basis is that do not interpret what he says with the assumption that we always interpret during our life, and we are able to recognize what properly is interpreting. So it's, in a sense, it's the myth of Verstehen, the myth of a comprehension and transformation, of free transformation that enters in our life. So the basis is surprising, but when I was saying that in Searle there is res cogitans, res extensa, and not only in a Cartesian sense, but also in the sense of Marin Mersenne, c'est-à-dire namely the fact that there is something like a divine action in our mind that makes it capable of generating all this new, which is our mind. But if we take another example, for example, Method chess player, you know the novel of Poe. There was a small man playing, but now there is no more a small man, not even a sir inside, and we can play chess. Or, well, play chess against the computer. Is still play chess? Of course it is. I am playing with the computer. If yes, the computer plays chess. And this is the result of what we say yes. Quantitative rule. When I play chess, it depends on what you choose as a partner in your play, but when you play chess, the intentionality of playing chess comes from the rule of chess and not from you. It's clearly directed from the chess to you and not from you to the chess. And the collective intentionality of playing the chess is not a spirit that is, but is the rule and the description, the table, the pieces of paper, of chess, etc. End of the presentation. We also have one of the proof that we are free people and there is something like a soul in ourselves is the responsibility. We feel responsible, and this says to us that there is something very strong in us that is not simply machine. Well, this is true, but we should pay attention on what is the origin of this. For instance, this is an ancient landline phone, which was a very interesting object because it was stable, it was not portable, and it was without memory. This character made it so that we can leave, get out of our house at 8 a.m. We go to the library and then make a commentary of Timaeus, for instance, noble activity during 10 hours without, and maybe at the very beginning, when we get out of our house, the telephone became to ring. Then it rings for 10 hours, we come back, it ceases to ring 2 minutes before we enter in the house. We have no responsibility at all, absolutely no responsible to nothing. Because we never heard. Now, at the end of this talk, you will open your devices, and you will discover some not answered call. This is a problem, the not answered call. This not answered call is the origin of responsibility. I believe that Emmanuel Levinas now he will not speak about of the face of the other, but on the not answered call, because it's the not answered call that create our moral responsibility on the question of answering. What is the origin of this immense moral responsibility? The fact that is the basis of a recording. It is recorded. This is not recorded, not responsibility. Recorded responsibility, and note that this also applies to other cases. Imagine that two people made a crime. The first remember the crime, the second does not remember the crime. In a sense, we feel less responsible who don't remember the crime. It's not, but here is very clear that a pure mechanical performance to record creates the high spiritual and really spiritual responsibility. Many thanks.